Where were you when Fairleigh Dickinson knocked off the Purdue Boilermakers for perhaps the greatest upset in college basketball history? I was working out in my home gym, actually. Never mind the fact that they're only the second number 1 seed to lose to a 16 seed in the tournament ever. They were actually ranked number 1 in the nation for much of 2023. And the problem is that Purdue's failure feels way too familiar. They've been a top 4 seed in the tournament every year since 2017. But in the past 3 seasons, they've lost to a 13, 15, and now a 16 seed. And the real reason Purdue keeps failing in March Madness is connected to what makes them so good throughout the regular season. Purdue is playing moneyball with college basketball, building their entire roster without any projected NBA draft picks. Moneyball is a book by Michael Lewis that explains how the Oakland Athletics built a playoff caliber baseball team in MLB with the lowest payroll in the league. College basketball doesn't have payrolls, but it does involve actually recruiting. And Purdue's secret is that they've mastered how to recruit to win college basketball games, starting with locking down the top recruits in their state. In 2023, they had 10 players from their home state of Indiana on the roster. That's 2/3 worth of the team. Don't get me wrong, these are some of the best players Indiana has to offer. In 2022, they brought in 2 of the top 10 prospects in Indiana. But in 2021, they brought in players number 1 and number 2. Their only projected second-round draft pick came from Canada by way of IMG Academy, and he still became the National Player of the Year. But Purdue's in-state recruiting is about finding the types of players who play their brand of disciplined basketball. So NBA hype alone doesn't get you a phone call from them. Those guys can go to Kentucky or Duke. But March Madness often comes down to 2 things. 1, great guard play. And 2, whoever has the most talented player on the court. And that's where things start to fall apart for Purdue. The last time Purdue made it to the Elite 8, they lost to the team that became the national champions. And that was Virginia in overtime. And they had an NBA caliber guard to play behind. That was Carsen Edwards. Purdue is always great in conference no matter what, because their coach, Matt Painter in this case, can game plan effectively. And their players are skilled and disciplined. That will win you a lot of games in the regular season. But if you don't have an incredibly talented lead guard, it is incredibly hard to string together a bunch of wins in the tournament, which is why Purdue lost to FDU with 2 starting guards who were 5'8" and 5'9". Because there are a lot of talented guards in the country, and a single elimination tournament game is a pretty good equalizer for any team. Purdue has done a great job of keeping their players out of the transfer portal, which is why they barely feel the need to use it. The only transfer they had on their team this year is a graduate transfer, and that doesn't really count in my book. But Purdue really struggles because they just don't have legitimate NBA talent. And it's funny, because in today's world, the longer a player stays in college, the more it is assumed there's something wrong with them as a pro prospect. The ideal Purdue basketball recruit is ranked somewhere between 50 and 150 in the nation. These are talented players, but they're not legit NBA prospects. And any NBA player who comes from Purdue has played his way into that conversation. That's what happened with not just Carsen Edwards, but Jaden Ivey. Ivey was an Indiana recruit who was 84th in the nation on ESPN, but played his way up to being considered for a lottery pick by the time he had finished his sophomore season. Carsen Edwards was actually 89th, but he was from Texas. Regardless, neither of those players were ever expected to make it to the NBA, but the odds worked out in their favor. And producing NBA talent clearly isn't Purdue's goal. Winning in March is, but they've been falling short of achieving that. Purdue has proven that to win in college basketball during the regular season, you don't really need the transfer portal, and you really don't even need projected NBA draft picks. But North Texas, St. Peter's, and now Fairleigh Dickinson have beaten them in the big dance 3 years in a row. And none of them have any NBA prospects on their team, which is probably why they matched up well, because Purdue doesn't have any either. And if they really want to change their fortunes in the tournament, they're going to have to make changing that a major priority. I'm Coach Rob, and thank you so much for watching this video. And if you want to see more content like this, then please like and subscribe.